Good morning, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well. Happy Monday morning. Just want to do a little kind of recap of what we've been doing and where you should be at before you watch this video. So this video is going to start with chapter 7. So if you have not read up through chapter 7, pause me and go to Friday's Google Classroom where you'll see the 3 videos and an audio of chapter 6. So you had an option of reading chapter 6 on your own or listening to a video of somebody reading it to you, and you had to decide that. But as of this point today, we're starting on chapter 7. So also, as far as what work you have to do with this, my suggestion to you is you will see underneath today's assignment with this video discussion questions for chapters 5, 6, and 7. Some of you have probably already done the ones for 5 and 6. You might just want to add to it the questions for chapter 7. So sometimes I get requests to access this doc, and what you're looking to do is being able to edit it. So I'm not going to give you those capabilities. This is just a read-only document that's below in this assignment. If you want to answer the discussion questions, and I'm hoping you do, you need to go into Schoology. There's a folder right on the first page of our classes that says Where the Red Fern Grows. You click on that. It will be open response discussion questions, and you'll see chapters 5, 6, and 7. So I really recommend you do that. I will grade them. I'll get them back to you. I'll give you some feedback, tell you if it's a good answer or not. I'll put a suggested answer from a classmate underneath it, and we can go from there. So we're going to start with chapter 7 today. So chapter 7 is one of my favorite chapters, so I'm really excited to read this to you. But I think I'm getting a little interference somehow. Is somebody trying to cut in here? What the?
Hi guys, chapter 7. It seems that the worries and wants of a young boy never cease. Now that I had my pups, another obstacle had cropped up. This one looked absolutely impossible. I had to have a coonskin so I could train them. With my 3 little traps and a bulldog determination, I set out to trap Mr. Ringtail. For 3 solid weeks, I practically lived on the river. I tried every trick I knew. It was no use. I just couldn't catch the willy old coons. In desperation, I went to my grandfather. He smiled as he listened to my tale of woe. Well, we'll have to do something about that, he said. To train those dogs right, you'll need that coon hide, that's for sure. Now, you watch the store while I go over to my shed. I'll be right back. After what seemed like an eternity, I saw him coming. He was carrying a brace and a bit, that was all. With a mischievous little smile on his face, he said, "You wouldn't think a fellow could catch a coon with this brace and bit, would you?" I thought he was kidding me, and it made me feel bad. "Why, Grandpa," I said, "you couldn't catch a coon in a jillion years with that thing. You just don't have any idea how smart they are." "Yes, you can," he said. "You bet your boots you can. Why, when I was a boy, I caught coons on top of coons with one of these things." I saw my grandpa was serious, and I got interested. He laid the brace down on the counter, picked up a small paper sack, and filled it about half full of horseshoe nails. "Now, you do everything exactly as I tell you," he said, "and you'll catch that coon." "Yes, sir, Grandpa," I said. "I will. I'll do anything to catch one of them." "Now, the first thing you'll need is some bright objects," he said. "The best thing is bright, shiny tin. Cut out some small little round pieces, a little smaller than this bit. Do you understand?" I nodded my head. "Now," he said, "go down along the river where there are lots of coon tracks."
So weird. So, Mrs. Lorenko, Lisa, I'm sorry. I was just trying to make a video for the kids and something happened to my computer. Were you? Oh, I didn't know you were reading along with us. Yeah, thanks. No, that's really cool. You did what? There's a, you set up a nanny cam in Mr. C's house? That's crazy. What do you think he's doing right now? Yeah, totally. Share the screen with me. Oh my gosh, this will be hysterical. I wonder what he's doing.
Find a good solid log close by and bore a hole down about 6 inches. Drop one of the bright pieces of tin down in the hole, and be sure it's laying right on the bottom. I was all ears. I didn't want to miss one word my grandfather said. Now and then I would glance at him to see if he was kidding me. In a serious voice, he went on talking. Now pay close attention, he said, because this is the main part of the trap. With eyes as big as a hoot owl's, I looked and listened. He took 4 of the horseshoe nails from the sack. With the thumb and forefinger of his left hand, he made a small O about the size of a bit, which was 1.5 inches in diameter. Now, we'll say this is the hole you bored in the log, he said. About an inch apart, drive these nails in on a slant opposite each other. Holding one of the nails in his right hand, he showed me the right angle. The ends of the nails will enter the hole about halfway between the top and the piece of tin. He continued, leave an opening between the sharp points big enough for a coon to get his paw through. He asked me if I understood. Again I nodded my head and moved a little closer to him. How is that going to catch a coon, Grandpa? I asked. It'll catch him all right, he said, and it won't fail. You see, a coon is a curious little animal. Anything that is bright and shiny attracts him. He will reach in and pick it up. When his paw closes on the bright objects, it balls up. And when he starts to pull it from the hole, the sharp ends of the nails will gouge into his paw, and he's caught. He looked over at me. Well, what do you think of it? He asked. I closed my eyes, and in my mind I could see the funnel-like entrance of the hole and the sharp, slanting points of the nails. I could see the coon reaching in for the shiny piece of metal. Naturally, his paw would be much larger when closed than it was when he reached in. It would be impossible for it to pass the sharp nails. It was all looking pretty good to me, and I was on the point of saying so, when it hit me. Why, all the coon had to do was open his paw, drop the object, and he was free. It all blew up then and there. I just knew my grandfather was playing a joke on me. I stepped back and almost cried as I said, Grandpa, you're kidding me. That kind of trap couldn't catch a coon. Why, all he'd have to do is open his paw, drop the piece of tin, and he could pull it from the hole. Grandpa started roaring with laughter. This did make me feel bad. With tears in my eyes, I started for the door. Wait a minute, Grandpa said. I'm not kidding you. Oh, I know, I like to have my jokes, same as any man. But I meant every word I said. I turned around and looked at him. He had stopped laughing and there was a hurt expression on his face. I wasn't laughing at you, he said. I was laughing more at myself than you. I just wanted to see if you were smart enough to see that there was a way the coon could free himself. A fellow wouldn't have to be very smart to see that, I said. Grandpa started talking seriously again. You know, he said, a coon has more than one peculiarity about him. When I was a boy, I had a pet coon. By watching him, I saw and learned a lot of things.
Yeah, no, please. I was watching. I mean, I gotta say, I was thinking we'd see him doing some burpees or some chin ups on some pole in a doorway. I did not expect that he'd be reading Where the Red Fern Grows. But hey, see, just goes to say you never know. And what a great reader. Yeah, no, that's kind of cool. All right, so what else is going on? You got to be kidding me. Lisa, I think you're going to get in trouble. You can't keep putting these nanny cameras into people's houses. You, Mr. Dow? All right, share the screen. He's got to be like, I don't know, playing something. What instrument does he play? All right. Yeah, share it. I want to see. Okay, but if you get in trouble, you didn't share with me, okay? All right. All right, good. Okay. I'll call you back. Bye.
Grandpa started talking seriously again. You know, he said, a coon has more than one particularity about him. When I was a boy, I had a pet coon. By watching him, I saw and learned a lot of things. He had a den in an old hollow tree in our front yard. I don't know the number of times I'd have to climb that tree and get my mother's scissors, buttons, needles, and thimble from his den. Why, he'd even carry out our knives, forks, and spoons. Anything that was bright and shiny, he took to his den. Grandpa stopped talking for a few minutes. I could see a faraway look in his eyes. Once again, he was living in those long ago days. I waited in silence for him to go on with his story. One of the most peculiar things about that coon, he said, was his front feet. Once he wrapped those little paws around something, he would never let go. My mother had an old churn. It was one of those kind with a small hole in the lid for the dasher. When she would get through churning, she would take the dasher out to wash it. That crazy coon would climb up on top of the churn, poke his little front paw through the hole, and get a fistful of butter. The hole was small, and when he closed his paw, he couldn't get it back out. All he had to do was open it, drop the butter, and he would be free. But do you think he would? No, sir. He would carry that churn lid all over the house, squalling and growling. Why, it took everyone in the house to free him. I'd have to wrap him up in a gunny sack or an old coat and pry his claws loose from the butter. Seeing this time after time is what gave me the idea for this trap. Once he reaches in and gets hold of that tin, he's caught, because he will never open his paw. With my confidence restored, it all sounded pretty good to me, and I was anxious to try out this wonderful plan. I thanked him, and taking the brace and nails, I left the store. By the time I reached home, it was too late in the day to start making my traps. That night I talked the idea over with Papa. I've heard of coons being caught that way, he said, but I never paid much attention to it. Your grandfather should know, though, for he was quite a coon hunter when he was a boy. From what he told me, I said, it never fails. Papa asked if I wanted to help him make my traps. No, I said. I think I can do it myself. I didn't sleep too well that night. I bored holes, drove nails, and fought coons practically all night. Early the next morning, I went to the trash pile. As I stirred around in the rusty old can, I thought of another time I had searched for a can. Finally, I found the one I wanted. It was bright and shiny. Everything was going along just fine until Mama caught me cutting out the circles of tin with her scissors. I always swore she could find the biggest switches of any woman in the Ozarks. That time she overdid it. I was almost to the river before the stinging stopped. It wasn't hard to find places for my traps. All along the river, large sycamore logs lay partly submerged in the clear blue water. On one where I could see the muddy little tracks of the ringtails, I bored a hole, dropped in a piece of tin, and drove my nails. On down the river I went, making my traps. I stopped when I ran out of nails. Altogether I had 14 traps. That night, Papa asked me how I was making out.
All right, so let's just put something to rest here. Peculiarity. That's how you say it. It's a hard word, yeah. No, it means like something that's peculiar about you. That word is like, strange or different, oddly or quirky. Yeah. No, it's a tough one. Yeah, no, I practiced it and I looked it up. All right. Well, we know what she's going to be doing. All right. All right. She's fine with it though? You told her. Okay. Yeah, I'd love to see her. Go ahead. Share the screen. All right. You can call me later. Bye.
Page 32. That night, Papa asked me how I was making out. Oh, all right, I said. I've got 14 of them made. He laughed and said, well, you can't ever tell. You may catch one. The next morning, I was up with the chickens. I took my pups with me, as I just knew I'd have a big ringtail trapped, and I wanted them to see it. I was a disappointed boy when I peeked out of a cane brake at my last trap and didn't see a coon. All the way home, I tried to figure out what I'd done wrong. I went to Papa. He put his thinking cap on and thought the situation over. Maybe you left too much scent around when you made those traps, he said. If you did, it'll take a while for it to go away. Now, I wouldn't get too impatient. I'm pretty sure you'll catch one sooner or later. Papa's words perked me up just like air does a deflated inner tube. He was right. I had simply left too much scent around my traps. All I had to do was wait until it disappeared, and I'd have my coon hide. Morning after morning, it was the same old disappointment. No coon. When a week had gone by and still no results from my traps, I gave up. What little patience I had was completely gone. I was firmly convinced that coons didn't walk on sycamore logs anymore, and bright shiny objects had about as much effect on them as a coonhound would. One morning, I didn't get up to run my trap line. I stayed in bed. What was the use? It was just a waste of time. When the family sat down for breakfast, I heard my oldest sister say, Mama, isn't Billy going to get up for breakfast? Why, is he in his room? Mama asked. I didn't know. I thought he was down looking at his traps. I heard Papa say, I'll go wake him up. He came to the door and said, You better get up, Billy. Breakfast is ready. I don't want any breakfast, I said. I'm not hungry. Papa took one look at me and saw I had a bad case of the ringtail blues. He came over and sat down on the bed. What's the matter? He asked. You having coon trouble? Grandpa lied to me, Papa, I said. I should have known better. Who ever heard of anyone catching a coon with a brace and bit and a few horseshoe nails? I wouldn't say that, Papa said. I don't think your grandpa deliberately lied to you. Besides, I've heard of coons being caught that way. Well, I don't think I've done anything wrong, I said. I've done everything exactly as he said, and I haven't caught one yet. I still think it's that scent, Papa said. You know, someone told me, or I read it somewhere, that it takes about a week for scent to die away. How long has it been since you made those traps? It's been over a week, I said. Well, the way I figure, it's about time for you to catch one. Yes, sir, I wouldn't be surprised if you came in with one any day now. After Papa had left the room, I lay thinking of what he had said. Any day now. I got up and hurried into my clothes. As soon as I was finished with breakfast, I called my pups and lit out for the river. The first trap was empty. So was the second one. That old feeling of doubt came over me again. I thought, it's no use. I'll never catch one, and I so need the skin to train my pups. On the way to my third trap, I had to walk through a thick stand of wild cane. It was tough going, and my pups started whimpering. I stopped and picked them up. We'll be out of this in a few minutes, I said, and then you'll be all right. I came plowing out of the matted mass and was right on the trap before I realized it. I was met by a loud squall. I was so surprised I dropped the pups. There he was, my first coon. He was humped up on the sycamore log, growling and showing his teeth. He kept jerking his front paw, which was jammed deep in the hole I had bored. He was trapped by his own curiosity. I couldn't move, and I felt like my wind had been cut off. I kept hearing a noise, but couldn't make out what it was. The movement of the boy pup shook me from my trance. The unidentified sound was his bawling. He was trying to climb up on the log and get to the coon. I yelled at him and darted in to get hold of his collar. On seeing my movement, the coon let out another squall. It scared me half to death. I froze in my tracks and started yelling at the pup. The girl pup worked around behind the coon and climbed up on the log. I screamed at her. She paid no attention to me. Digging his sharp little claws in the bark, the boy pup made it to the top. He didn't hesitate. Straight down that sycamore log he charged. With teeth bared, the coon waited. When my pup was about 2 feet from him, he made a lunge. The coon just seemed to pull my pup up under his stomach and went to work with tooth and claw. The girl pup saved him. Like a cat in a corn crib, she sneaked in from behind and sank her needle-sharp teeth in the coon's back. It was too much for old Ringy. He turned the boy pup loose, turned around, and slapped her clear off the log. She came running to me, yelping her head off. I grabbed her up in my arms and looked for the boy pup. When the coon had turned him loose, he too had fallen off the log. He was trying to get back to the coon. I darted in and grabbed him by the hind leg. With a pup under each arm and running as fast as I could, I lit out for the house. Coming out of the bottoms into a fresh plowed field, I set my pups down so I could get a little more speed. I started yelling as soon as I came in sight of the house. Mama came flying out with my sisters right behind her. Papa was out by the barn, harnessing his team. Mama yelled something to him about a snake. He dropped the harness, jumped over the rail fence, and in a long lope started for me. Mama reached me first. She grabbed me and shouted, "Where did it bite you?" "Bite me?" I said. "Why, Mama, I'm not bit. I've got him, Mama. I've got him." "Got what?" Mama asked. "A big coon," I said. "The biggest one in the river bottoms. He's this big, Mama." I made a circle with my arms as big as a 20-gallon keg. Mama just groaned way down deep and covered her face with her hands. Some big tears squeezed out between her fingers. Almost in a whisper, I heard her say, "Thank God, I thought you were snake bitten." My sisters, seeing Mama cry, puckered up and started bawling. "He needs a whipping," the oldest one said. "That's what he needs, scaring Mama that way."
No, yeah, Lisa, no, she's a great reader. What do you mean she's better than me? She's better than you, but is she better than me? You know how many times I've read this story? Yeah, exactly. So, no other surprises, right? Nobody else coming in through here? All right, because this makes me a little uncomfortable. I don't know if we should be going into their houses like this, but all right, if Mr. T said it was okay, it's fine. Yeah. All right, well, I got to go because I got to finish reading chapter 7 of these kids. All right, have a good one. Call me later. Bye. Better than me. She said she was better than me. Huh. I'll show her. Something busted loose inside me and I cried a little too. I didn't mean to scare Mama, I sniffed. I just wanted everyone to know I caught a coon. Up until this time, Papa hadn't said a word. He just stood looking on. "Here now," he said, "let's have none of this crying. He didn't mean to scare anyone." Taking his handkerchief from his pocket, he stepped over to Mama, put his arm around her, and started drying her eyes. Mama poked her head around him and glared at me. "Billy Coleman," she shouted, "if you ever scare me like that again, I'll take a switch and wear you to a frazzle." This hurt my feelings, and I really did get tuned up. "Everyone's mad at me," I said, "and I haven't done anything but catch the biggest coon on the river." Mama came over. "I'm sorry," she said. "I didn't mean to be cross, but you did scare me. I thought a rattlesnake had bitten you." "Now that that's all settled," Papa said, "we had better go get that coon." Looking at Mama, he said, "Why don't you and the girls go with us? I don't think it'll take long." Mama looked at me, smiled, and turned to the girls. "Would you like to go?" she asked. Their only answer was a lot of squealing and jumping up and down. On the way, Mama noticed some blood on my shirt. She stopped me and started looking me over. Where did that come from? She asked. Did that coon bite you? That'd be nerve-wracking, right? Rabies? No, Mama, I said. I didn't get close enough for him to bite me. With a worried look on her face, she jerked out my shirt. You don't seem to be scratched anywhere, she said. Maybe this is where it came from, Papa said. He reached down and picked up my boy pup. His little nose was split wide open and was bleeding. I saw a relieved look come over Mama's face. Looking at me, she started shaking her head. I don't know, she said. I just don't know. Did that coon get hold of this pup? Papa asked. He sure did, Papa, I said. But it wasn't the coon's fault. If it hadn't been for little Ann, he'd have eaten him up. I told how my dogs had tied into the coon. Papa laughed as he fondled my pup. So tied into means to really attack energetically. He sure did, Papa, I said, but that wasn't the coon's fault. I told how my dogs had tied into the coon. Papa laughed as he fondled my pup. This dog is going to be a coonhound, he said, and I mean a good one. The coon started squalling as soon as we came in sight. My goodness, Mama said. You wouldn't think anything so small would be so vicious, one of our vocab words. Papa picked up a club. Now, everybody stand back out of the way, he said. This won't take long. My pups were wanting to get the coon so badly that they were hard to hold back. I had to squeeze them up tight to keep them from jumping right out of my arms. My sisters, with eyes as big as blue marbles, got behind Mama and peeked around her. Papa whacked the coon a good one across the head. He let out a loud squall, growled, and showed his teeth. He tried hard to get Papa, but the trap held him. The girls buried their faces in Mama's dress and started bawling. Mama turned her back on the fight. I heard her say, I wish we hadn't come, poor thing. Papa whacked him again, and it was over. It was too much for Mama and the girls. They left. I heard the tall cane tattling as they ran for the house. After the coon was killed, I walked over. Papa was trying to get the coon's paw from the trap. He couldn't do it. Taking a pair of pliers from his pocket, he said, It's a good thing I had these along, or we would have had to cut his foot off. After Papa had pulled the nails, he lifted the coon's paw from the hole. There, clamped firmly in it, was the bright piece of tin. In a low voice, Papa said, Well, I'll be darned. All he had to do was open it up and he was free, but he wouldn't do it. Your grandfather was right. Remember Billy thought he was tricking him? No, Grandpa knew what these coons were all about. A sorrowful look came over Papa's face as he ran his fingers through the soft yellow hair. Billy, he said, I want you to take a hammer and pull the nails from every one of those traps. It's summertime now and their fur isn't any good. Besides, I don't think this is very sportsmanlike. The coon doesn't have a chance. It's all right this time. You needed this one. But from now on, I want you to catch them with your dogs. That way, they have a 50-50 chance. So what he's saying is that, when you're to be sportsmanlike and hunting is a sport, it has to be fair. And he's saying these traps aren't really fair. The coon didn't really have a chance to get out. And where's the challenge or the hunt in that? And maybe that's wrong. I will, Papa, I said. That's what I intended to do. While we were skinning the coon, Papa asked me when I was going to start training my dogs. I don't know, I said. Do you think they're too young? No, I don't think so, he said. I've heard that the younger they are, the better it is. Well, in that case, I said, I'll start tomorrow. With the help of my oldest sister, we started giving my pups their first lessons. She would hold their collars while I made trails with the hide for them to follow. I'd climb trees that leaned out over the river, jump out into the water, swim to the other side, and make trails up and down the bank. With a long pole and wire, I'd drag the hide on top of rail fences, swing it through the air, and let it touch the ground 20 or 30 feet away. I did everything with that hide a coon would do, and probably a lot more things a coon couldn't do. It was a beautiful sight to see my pups work those trails. At first, they were awkward and didn't know what to do, but they would never quit trying. So he needed this coon hide to go ahead and use it to train his dogs on how to catch and what they'll explain it called tree, where you get a coon up in a tree. Other coons, so coons. We say raccoons. So that's what he's doing with this coon hide. Now, a lot of this hunting stuff, we might, everyone might have different opinions or different beliefs in, but you know, understand that they're eating this meat, they're using the hides of the animals, and this is part of the way of life in the Ozark Mountains in the 1930s. Old Dan would get so eager and excited he would overrun a trail. Where it twisted or turned, he would run straight on, bawling up a storm. It didn't take him long to realize that a smart old coon didn't always run in a straight line. Little Ann never overran a trail. She would wiggle and twist, cry and whine, and pretty soon she would figure it out. At first, they were afraid of water. I would never admit it even to myself. I always said that they just didn't like to get wet. They would follow the trail to the stream and stop. Sitting down on their rears, they would cry and beg for help. With a pup under each arm, I'd wade out into the stream and set them down in the cool water. 9 times out of 10, one pup would swim one way and the other would just go the opposite way. I had time with this part of their training, but my persistence had no bounds. It wasn't long until they loved the water. Old Dan would jump as far out as he could and practically knock the river dry. Little Ann would ease herself in and swim like a muskrat for the opposite shore. I taught my dogs every trick I knew and any new ones I heard about. I taught them how to split up on a riverbank to search for the hidden trail because it was impossible to tell where a coon would come out of the water. Sometimes he might swim downstream and other times he might swim upstream. Maybe he would come back to the bank he had just left, or he would cross over to the other side. Perhaps he would stop in the middle of the stream on an old drift. So remember, we talked about these coons are smart, so they know how to lose the scent, or how to have the dogs lose their scent and to escape. And they would do that by going in the stream where you can't smell the water anymore. Sometimes he would come up out of the water by catching the dangling limbs of a leaning birch and climbing up, never touching the bank. Or he would come out on the same trail he used to go in and backtrack. He would sometimes crawl up under an undermined bank or into an old muskrat den. One of the favorite tricks of a smart old ringtail is the tree barking trick. This he accomplished by running far up on the side of the tree and using his stout legs for leverage, springing 20 or 30 feet away before touching the ground. Dumb hound, so we saying kind of like a springboard, like if you've ever seen swimmers do laps, how they go to the edge of the pool and then they turn around and they use the wall to push themselves off. So that's what the hounds are doing, using the tree to kind of accelerate their speed and push themselves off. Dumb hounds trail up to the tree and start bawling treed. I taught my dogs to circle for a good 100 yards to be sure he was still in the tree before bawling. In order to learn more about coon hunting, I'd bang around my grandfather's store and listen to the stories told by the coon hunters. Some of the tales I heard were long and tall, but I believed them all. So we know what a tall tale is, right? It's like, did that really happen? I could always tell when Grandpa was kidding me by the twinkle in his eyes. He told me how a coon could climb right up in the fog and disappear in the stars, and how he could leap on a horse's back and run him over your dogs. I didn't care, for I loved to hear the tall tales. Anything that had a coon hair in it, I believed completely. All through the summer and into the late fall, the training went on. Although I was worn down to a frazzle, I was a happy boy. I figured I was ready for the ringtails. Late one evening, tired and exhausted, I sat down by a big sycamore and called my dogs to me. It's all over, I said. There'll be no more lessons. I've worked hard and I've done my best. From now on, it's all up to you. Hunting season is just a few days away, and I'm going to let you rest, for I want you to be in good shape the night it opens. It was wonderful indeed how I could have heart-to-heart talks with my dogs, and they always seemed to understand. Each question I asked was answered in their own doggish way. What did Billy say about his communication with our dogs? with his dogs is one of the questions. So look back at that paragraph. Although they couldn't talk in my terms, they had a language of their own that was easy to understand. Sometimes I could see the answers in their eyes, and again it would be in the friendly wagging of their tails. Other times I could hear the answer in a low whine or feel it in the soft caress of a warm flicking tongue. In some ways, they would always answer. All right, go do those discussion questions. Look at the open response ones that are in our Schoology, where the red fern grows. There's another subfolder, open response discussion questions. When you finish writing those, click in the other folder within where the red fern grows, where it says multiple choice. Check in and complete that. All right, and then you'll be good to go and start tomorrow. And I'll post the assignment in the morning. Hope all is well. Bye, guys. Have a great day.